As you're making your way back, please make sure your outlines are open to Legacy Point 2 as we continue talking about keeping God in our relationships. Right. Well, we've been talking about keeping God in our friendships, and now I want to turn our attention to the whole subject of romance and dating and special friendships, if you will. In our third session, we're going to fast forward and talk about getting ready for marriage. And some of you are like, whoa, hold on. Well, you'll see where I go in a few minutes with that. I do have to give you a fair warning, though, that these final two sessions, talking about dating and romance and then talking about marriage, they get fairly personal. And I also realize that some of the things that I'm going to be saying are pretty countercultural. And I want to encourage you that I'm going to be taking a very forward-thinking approach. And what I mean by that is that when it comes to things like dating, sexuality, thinking about marriage, all of us, I'm talking to you young people especially right now, already have a background. There's already choices that we've made, already things that we've done with our hearts, with our bodies, whatever it may be. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time looking back at where we've been. I want to talk to you about a very compelling Christian vision forward for where God would have us go. So let's talk about this issue of dating. Our culture is very clear about how dating is supposed to work. First of all, you're supposed to flirt. And you're supposed to flirt as early in your life as possible, ideally elementary school. And there may be little notes that are passed in the hallways or a little mutual friend that comes up and says, Mikey thinks you're cute, or whatever it is. And you might even, I'll bet some of you young people had this, or parents had this, you might have even gone out in elementary school. Hey, will you go out with me? Why, yes, I will go out with you. Now, no one ever goes anywhere. There's no actual going out, but we're going out. You know what I mean. Now, you move forward from that phase, and you're supposed to then start liking and unliking and liking and unliking and liking and unliking people through a long series of stuff until finally maybe you get to the age where you actually physically do go out with someone. Then you're supposed to fall in love and fall out of love and do some things with your bodies and other things with your bodies, because if the relationship's ever going to work, we've got to find out if we're sexually compatible. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But one of the most essential rules of dating that the world gives us is that when it comes to who you like, who you don't like, the thoughts and feelings you have about sexuality, whatever you do not, under any circumstances, share this part of your life with your parents. This is private information. This part of the climb, let's go back to our climbing the mountain together, okay? This part of the climb, when it comes to romance, sexuality, and dating, this part of the climb, I'm unhooking from mom and dad, and I'm going to go on my own over here because this is private and this is personal stuff. Now, unfortunately, most moms and dads in this room grew up with the modern dating system that I just described to you. And so as a result, few parents today, even in the church, talk to their children in a very personal, straightforward way about dating, relationships, and sexuality. Dads, I want to have your help on something for just a moment. It's always a little risky to have the audience help you make a point because it could flop terribly, but here we go. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4, God gives fathers a job description. That job description is, fathers, do not exasperate your children, but bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. In other words, dads, your job is to shepherd your children, pastor your children, disciple your children, prepare your children for godly living in every area of life. Okay, so I've got my flip chart up here. You thought I was real spiritual and I had a cross, but this is not a cross. This is just a table with the right side and the left side, okay? So dads, this is where I need your help. Fathers, do not exasperate your children, but now here's the command. Bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Shepherd them, disciple them, care for them, guide them. Men, give me some things that this command would apply to. Well, training my children in godliness would apply to this area of their life. Start listing stuff. So I'll put down how they handle their money. That would be an area where I need to disciple them. Now keep going. Fill in the list for me. Just shout it out, guys. Relationships, okay? Cars. As in, be safe. Or here's the kind of car to get, or whatever it may be. Driving habits. All right, keep going.
How to treat a lady.
How to treat a lady, good. Yeah, other influences? Personal character? Okay, good. We could keep going. We could have a long list. And by the way, that says character. If you can't read it, it's because I don't write well. Okay, now I want you to start describing areas of life for me. And by major areas of life here, I'm not talking about, what kind of cereal you'll have in the morning. Major areas of life that are not covered by Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4. Areas of life that a dad really has no responsibility whatsoever in shaping the character of their children. Good. Awkward pause. Why is there an awkward pause? Because there aren't any. There's no area of life of growing in faith and character and godliness where Ephesians 6:4, the call to dads to bring their children up in the training and instruction of the Lord, doesn't apply. So men, when it comes to the whole area of choosing a spouse, preparing to be a wife, preparing to be a husband, getting involved in relationships with boys and girls, is this one on the, yup, dad's got to be involved, or no, that one doesn't really matter that much? Yup, dad's got to be involved because it's a critical area of faith and godliness. It's interesting. We've got parents that will spend hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars to help their child find the right college. And they won't spend an hour or a dollar helping them find the right spouse. You understand that the choice of spouse that you make is going to influence your life 1,000,000 times more than wherever you go to school, whatever piece of paper you get? This is critical. So here we go, a few points on this. Number one, I'm going to challenge you to trust God and what He has said. You see, some people are going to tell you that the Bible never talks about dating. Never talks about dating. Well, that's partially true. The word dating's not in the Bible. I don't think the word boyfriend or girlfriend is in the Bible. But that doesn't mean that God has not spoken about romance, about sexuality, and here's the key, that He hasn't spoken about the process of how to find a spouse, the process of preparing for marriage. Because at the end of the day, the purpose of dating is getting ready for marriage. It's finding Mr. Right or finding Mrs. Right and figuring out relationships so that we can get married. And on that issue, the Bible's filled with principles of preparing for marriage. And the first of those principles that I'm going to challenge you with is that in the Bible, parents play an active part in partnering with, climbing with their son or their daughter in finding a godly spouse. Let me summarize for you what you find in Genesis chapter 24. God has blessed Abraham and Sarah with a miracle son, Isaac. And God has promised Abraham that He's going to fill the whole earth with His descendants who are going to worship Him. And so Isaac's pretty critical to this whole operation, right? And Isaac's marriage and Isaac's children are pretty critical to this whole operation. So what Abraham does is he just sends Isaac out into the pagan nightclubs each night to hope he finds a good girl. Is that what he does? No, that's not what he does. He doesn't just send him out and say, hey, I hope you bring home somebody good. He has a very active plan. In fact, he sends out one of his servants. He says, you know what? I got to make sure that at least we give Isaac a fighting chance of finding a woman who believes in God. So he sends him back and he finds this gal, Rebecca, and he goes to Rebecca's parents and shares with him about Abraham and about Isaac. And they say, hey, you want to go meet this guy? You want to do this? Rebecca says, yes. Rebecca and Isaac are introduced. Isaac loves her. Okay, this wasn't some like forced on them or, you know what I mean, sort of thing. She chose willingly and he chose willingly. But Abraham did not just entrust his son or entrust his daughter or the daughter Rebecca to a stranger. The Bible says a lot about how young people are to explore romance and explore relationships. And the vision the Bible gives us is that moms and dads and sons and daughters partner together in that process. I want to give you a second challenge here, and that is to take warning from those who have fallen. Take warning from those who have fallen. Not only do you get a vision for partnership in the Bible when it comes to dating and romance, but we've got warnings, strong, strong warnings from parents to their children about the disasters that can happen in your life if you mess up decisions in this area. Now again, we're forward thinking. What I mean by that is that some of you are here and some decisions you've made in your life that can't be undone. The good news is that Jesus really did die on the cross. He really did rise again from the dead, which means there's forgiveness for anything back there and supernatural strength for the future to obey him now and obey him tomorrow. Listen to Proverbs chapter 5. Solomon is writing to his son, and he's pleading with him to guard himself sexually, pleading with him to keep himself pure for marriage. Solomon knows a little bit about sexual sin. All right? You may not remember this, 300 wives, 700 concubines. He knows a little bit about the disaster that comes into your life. Listen, hear his strong words, Proverbs 5, warning his son about sexuality outside of marriage. He says, "Now then, my sons, listen to me. Don't turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from the adulteress. Don't go near the door of her house, lest you give your best strength to others and your years to the one who is cruel, lest strangers feast on your wealth and your toil enriches another man's house. At the end of your life, you'll groan. When your flesh and your body are spent, you will say, 'How I hated discipline. How my heart spurned correction. I would not obey my teachers or listen to my instructors. And I've come to listen to this last phrase, I have come to the brink of utter ruin in the midst of the whole assembly.'" Turn on the television, open up your newspaper. Every day, you will find someone because of sexual sin who has come to utter ruin in the midst of the whole assembly, their church, their company, their country. Solomon's just pleading. Now again, parents, I'm going to ask for your help here. Always risky because it may not work. I want to ask you a series of questions. First, this is for moms and dads. If you were a Christian when you were in high school, I want you to stand up. Mom and dad, if you were a Christian when you were in high school, I want you to stand up. Don't worry, I'm not going to embarrass anybody. It's all right. Okay. Now, if you did not date anyone in high school, you went on no dates, I want you to sit down. By the way, don't be embarrassed. That's a feather in your cap, okay? That's a good thing. Now, if you did date, but the person you dated became your spouse, in other words, you only dated one person, and you ended up marrying them, you too sit down. Okay, so if we did this right, those of you that are standing, you were Christians in high school, you went on some dates with a guy, with a gal, and you didn't get married to that guy, you ended up marrying some guy, gal, you married somebody else, yeah? Okay, final question is this. I want you to think about the effect that those dating experiences had on your spirituality and walk with God. I want you to ask yourself, just in your own heart, did those dating experiences accelerate my godliness and character, or did they actually draw me further away from Christ and my walk with him? If you would say the latter, you'd say, as I look back, I would say that those experiences did not accelerate my godliness. I want you to sit down. All right. Young people, did you see what happened? Everybody can sit down now. Thank you. Did you see what happened? What did the majority of people do when I asked them about their own experiences in dating in high school? Did the majority say it accelerated or decelerated their spiritual life? Decelerated their spiritual life. There were some that stood standing, and that's okay. We've got all different journey on things like that. But that's a message there, because the day in which we live, unfortunately, we are just met with so many different lies from the culture about how to do important things. One of the big lies that's going on right now has to do with living together. Okay, the world says you really need to make sure you live together, before you get married. I mean, you wouldn't buy a car without test driving it, right? That's one line I hear. I do a lot of premarital counseling, and this is where this line of sexual compatibility comes in. They say, well, we know we are good friends and all, but we have to find out if we're sexually compatible. My response to that has always kind of been, look, if one of you is a boy and one of you is a girl, I don't mean to be crass, but like from a compatibility standpoint, I'm fairly confident that things are going to work out okay here. I mean, call me crazy, I don't know. Now, you may not know this, but 80% of couples who live together and then get married get divorced. Did you know that? 80%. of couples who live together, then get married. That doesn't make much sense, right? You'd think that living together would weed out the bad relationships. They live together, they hate each other's guts, they break up, saved the day. But that's not what happens. There's two big reasons for that huge divorce rate. Number one, they've infected the relationship with sin. They've built the relationship before marriage in disobedience to God in the sexual area. And number two, they think that they're practicing marriage, but they're still just putting their best foot forward. They're still just dating. It's glorified dating in the same house. You understand? They're still writing the notes and doing the flowers and all that kind of stuff. And the real character in the person hasn't come out yet. So they get married, things get bad, and they say, you changed. So things were better when we weren't married. And off they go to court. See, here's the reality. This is a hard pill to swallow, but I'm going to encourage you to consider it. The modern dating system and the living together system, these are not practiced for marriage. They're practiced for divorce. You practice how to love and unlove, love and unlove, connect and unconnect, connect and unconnect, and you get very good at it. You become very skilled at breaking up. And then oftentimes that happens in divorce court. So, if the world system of dating's broken, what should we do? How do we go about preparing for marriage and finding a spouse? Same challenge I'm going to keep giving you throughout the night. That is, climb together toward the same goal. This part of your life, young men, this part of your life, young women, is too important for you to go it alone. Just as I shared with you a few moments ago, give your heart to your parents. Let them into this part of your life. Tell them who you like. Tell them if somebody likes you. Tell them who maybe likes you. Tell them who you don't like. Tell them the struggles and thoughts and feelings that you have when it comes to the sexual part of your life. Give your heart to your parents. Let them in to everything. Now, many times, teens miss something that's really important in this whole area of dating, relationships, and sexuality. The majority of the time, not every time, but the majority of the time, what the teenager wants, and this is especially true in Christian homes, what the teenager wants and what mom and dad want is exactly the same thing. You agree on a lot more than you think you do. So let me ask moms and dads, okay? Well, young people first. Let me ask you a question. I want you to raise your hand, you young men, young women. Raise your hand if you want to marry a godly person, enjoy the gift of sex, and enjoy the happiness of a Christian family someday. Raise your hand if you're like, yeah, that sounds good to me. I can't see everybody, but it looks like most of the young people raise their hands. All right, moms and dads, raise your hand if you want your son or daughter to marry a godly person, enjoy the gift of sex, and enjoy the happiness of a Christian family someday. Raise your hand if you think, yeah, that sounds good. Oh, look at that. You're just like, you want me to enjoy sex? What? Yeah, they really do. Okay, in the context of marriage, all right? That's what the point's about here. But you see, if moms and dads, you raised your hand and you just saw your son or daughter raise their hand, guess what? You want the same thing. You actually have the same goal. And so what would God have you do? Climb what? You fill in the blank. Together. You both just told me you want to go to the exact same place. Climb together. Give your hearts to each other. And I know it's hard, and I know that you're going to be a weirdo because everybody else, they're doing it the modern dating method. Young men, young women separate from their parents, never tell them a thing. Moms and dads send them out to the pagan nightclub, say, I hope you bring home somebody good. Okay, just like, Abraham didn't do, but you know what I mean. And the whole thing falls apart. So you're going to do it different. I'm going to have you go talk about this one now. It's getting a little hotter each time we send you out to talk. That's okay. We got 4 questions you're going to talk about. The first 2 are just as a family, as you've been doing before. So you're going to split out. You're going to talk about those first 2 questions as a family. Then you're going to come back to your tables, and you're going to talk about the second 2 questions with the other families seated together at your tables with you. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes for that. Go.